Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. Now, Article 25 of the Indian Constitution has been the subject of fierce debate ever since it came into effect on January the 26th, 1950. And this article, Article 25, sought to define Sikhs, Jains and Buddhists under a single Hindu legal umbrella, something that unsurprisingly has been deeply rejected by the Sikh panth ever since, and yet weaponised by Indian Hindutva extremists ever since to persecute and destroy Sikh identity in the region. So to discuss how this religious travesty came about and the key people battling out those arguments during the drafting process, I'm joined today by a regular guest, Dr. Grinder Singh Grewal. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Good morning, Angus. Thank you for giving me time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. You know, this subject is a very serious for the Sikhs, but unfortunately, even some of the attorneys I met never even had read the original one. Whatever was in their college courses, they read it. So I think we are going to discuss it more in detail, what actually happened, okay? So what we're talking about, 1951 Hindu Code Bill, which was presented to the Provisional Parliament by Ambedkar, who was a law minister in that cabinet, and what he presented, what he wanted to get it done, was opposed by Sikh representative. Two of them were the one who spoke most, Bhupinder Singh Mann. He was also attorney by profession, and Satluj Singh, who was also attorney. So we're going to talk B.R. Ambedkar and the Sikh representative. This is about the Article 25, okay? So let's go to next. So Ambedkar was chairman of the drafting committee for the Constitution. Ambedkar did not write Constitution. The first draft of Constitution was written by B.N. Rao. Okay? And Ambedkar was chairman of drafting committee, which was entrusted with the responsibility of scrutinizing, examining, and refining the draft. So, but he's portrayed as the hero of the Constitution, which is a mistake and mischief, okay? Ambedkar and the committee did not make the draft of the Constitution. They only reviewed it, line by line, make some corrections, and they voted on it, okay? In 1951, as a law minister, he presented the Hindu Code Bill in his capacity to introduce this bill to the Provisional Parliament. In the previous meeting, this Article 25 was never there before this 1951 Parliament meeting. So the people were surprised and very angry and opposing him. So the two, let's go to one. Next slide. Bhupinder Singh Mann, Sardar Bhupinder Singh Mann. He at one time was Advocate General for Punjab, eminent jurist and senior advocate. He made significant contributions to the Punjab's legal framework, known for his deep commitment to the justice. At one time he was a finance minister in PEPSU. So then after that, he had a mostly private life. He contributed most to this discussion on 25, which is documented in the history, word by word. Then next. Satluj Singh, he later on became Speaker of Lok Sabha. He was also the one who opposed the Hindu Code Bill, where the Sikhs were included in Hindus. These two and other Sikh representatives did not vote on this issue, but later on, and I think he became a member of the parliament. It's a curious question that he opposed and didn't sign, but then he became a Speaker of the Parliament. So some of the things are hard to understand. Next, go. So these are some of the things we come across. These are documents in India saved, and I think people can access them. The first mystery of Article 25. Uncovering the 1951 Parliament clash over Sikh identity and the Hindu Code Bill. That's what we're going to talk about that. This information is based on volume 14, part of 2 of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar's writing and speeches. So this material is we're using is from his speeches and the parliament records. Next. So Article 25, right to freedom and religion. Number 1, subject to public order, morally and health, and to the other provisions of part, all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right freely to profess, practice, and propagate religion. See, looks very good. There is a freedom of religion. But let's go to number 2. This is very typical of India's constitution. There's something written, looks very good, and then the next sentence they take back. So number 2, nothing in this article shall affect the operation of any existing law or prevent the state from making any laws. Yes, it looks good, there's a freedom, but the state has the right to change. What can they change? Regulating or restricting any economic, financial, political, or other secular activities which may be associated with their religious practice. So the state can undo any of those at their will. The next, providing for social welfare and reform or the throwing open of Hindu religious institutions of public character to all classes and sections of Hindus. So all these things, what they are granting in number 1, government can change. Explanation 2, this is where the most of the problem is. Explanation number 2, the wearing and carrying of kirpan shall be deemed to be included in the profession of Sikh religion. So they're giving Sikhs freedom to have a kirpan. Okay. Explanation 2. In subclass B of class 2, the reference to Hindu shall be construed as including a reference to persons professing the Sikh, Jain, or Buddhist religion, and the reference to Hindu religion institution shall be construed accordingly. So what he's saying that in class 2, explanation 2, class B, and class 2 of that Hindus, in reference to Hindus, will include Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. So this article was debated, this was not present in any of the previous discussion. It showed up first time in this parliament meeting, and all the previous meeting never had this written there. This was conspicuously missing. It was never debated by any constituent assembly, yet mathematically grouped distinct religious under a single Hindu umbrella. So this is a mischief, and Ambedkar as a law minister is contributing to that, or architect of that. Okay. In November 26, 1949, then in January 1950, final draft of the Constitution passed with the sneaked in Article 25, but it was never discussed. Members roll out to ceremony sign the Constitution 1950. The Sikh representatives Sada Hukum Singh and Bhupinder Singh Maan refused to append their signatures because this was never debated or discussed. Next. Ambedkar's legal framework hypothesis. Supporting evidence. So why Ambedkar is saying that this is justified? He says President cites Privy Council judgment from 1830 ruling Sikhs were Hindus for a legal purpose. Okay. Legal principle. So this 1830 in Calcutta High Court, there was some case talking about a personal law, not anything to do with religion, wherein that this was used, and he's using that as a defense. Okay. I remember in 1830, Sikhs have their own empire. Maharaj Ranjit Singh was alive. He died in 1839. So Sikhs was not Hindu. Sikhs had their own empire, but he's using this stupid argument. And what he's saying, there's a legal principle, say the state deceases. So if some decision has been made previously and people have accepted, wrong or right, that becomes a law. So that is his argument regarding Article 25, he's justifying the Jains, Buddhists, and Sikhs are Hindus based on that stupid uh, argument. And the other thing he said, Buddha, Mahavir, Sikh gurus, they started their own religion, but they never defined any legal system. So, since they didn't define any legal system in their religious books, then traditionally what he said there was a Hindu law, and that's what is the law he's going to use. Okay. So this is about next one. This is a 1830 law he's talking about, which has nothing to do with the religious laws or the laws in the Punjab present. So he's using the wrong argument, but he is not deviating from his position. Next. According to Sadaman, 5% of non-agriculture Sikhs who did the commerce business lived in cities, and 95% was agriculture Sikhs. And there, Ambedkar is using the argument in 1830 case, the 5% of the city people accepted that, which is not that the Sikh representative agree. Sarman says, when you have to discern clearly what law applies to them, you have not got to see the commercial classes, but you have got to look to the main community. So he said the 95% majority governed by a secular agriculture customary laws entirely separate from the Hindu laws. So this was the customary laws which actually was a secular and people in the village life has accepted. But Ambedkar would not listen to that. Okay, next. Matrix analysis, Hindu law versus customary law. Origin. So Hindu law, Brahminical, sacerdotal. Customary law, tribal, secular, unsacerdotal. So this customary law is what Rahman is talking about, and Hindu law is what Ambedkar is talking about, application. Based on religious identity and caste, but customary law was based on village community and agricultural land and their ties. Authority. In Hindu law, rigid Dharma Shastras dictated by Manu. In customary law, evolving uses tribal council, jirga, and elder sources, mains Hindu law and Ratik and Digest. This is from where the reference is. So Sadaman says very loud, if I have enjoyed emancipation from Manu for so long a time, will it not be a tyranny of the time if I have to submit now to a modern Manu? So he refuses to submit to modern Manu. Modern Manu here is Ambedkar. Manu is the one who wrote all those codes for Brahminical rules. Now there's a new Manu showing up in the parliament. Next. This is from the archives. Fundamentally different personal law. This is Rahman saying different religious precepts. If Sikhs can prove their marriage, succession, and divorce laws are fundamentally totally different from Brahminical rules, why are they denied the same exemption granted to Muslim and Christian? This is the Sadaman saying that we need the same exemption Muslims and Christians have been given because we have different set of rules and practices. The accusation, without exemption, the Hindu code will function not as a reform but as a conversion law for the Sikhs. So here is a new Manu, which is Ambedkar converting the Sikhs in this, and the Sikhs are refusing to accept that. Point and counterpoint, the Sikh exemption debate. You can see all this is from Ambedkar papers, written confidential, top secret. Okay. The consultation question, Ambedkar, no necessity to consult them. Sikhs were saying they were never consulted. Ambedkar saying no necessity to consult them. because all along law has assumed Sikhs are Hindus, claim the Rao committee took statements for specific Sikhs. And Sikh representatives are saying no authentic Sikh opinion agreed to the bill. The statutory body, SGPC representative, 151 members, unanimously opposed it. Not a single Sikh was on the select committee. So very similar to what they're trying to do now, happened before. The Sikhs were never consulted when the laws were made about them. Ambedkar, Indians must make a sincere attempt to come together. We ought not to sow the seeds of discord all the time. You know, he's very proud what he did, partitioning Punjab and Bengal. Now he's telling these people that we have to come together. You are all Hindus. Okay. Sikhs are saying integration should not mean forced absorption. Why should this not start from you? Why should this not start from you? Why are you doing? Sikhs are challenging Ambedkar, okay? The debate concludes in an uproar, tone deemed repugnant by both sides. So it's a very ugly argument, okay? Next. Identity and sovereignty. Sikh representative opposed class 2 to prevent legal absorption. So there's Ambedkar Singh on the left, my left, or screen left, and the other side. Class 2, subclass 1 of class 2 explicitly applied to Hindu code bill to Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs. So all those are considered Hindus. Echoes of the Article 25. This legal bracketing closely mirrored the controversial explanation of Article 2, explanation 2 of Article 25 in 1940 Constitution, which simply defined Hindus to include Sikhs and Jains and Buddhists. So this was all inserted after all the meetings and discussions. Nobody knew until it came back to the parliament. The constitutional disputes, Sikh representatives noted that explanation 2 was inserted into the final constitution draft surreptitiously without open debate, raising long-term trust issues. How can they trust when this is the kind of laws they're making without consultation? So Sardar Hukum Singh warned on the floor, what it may be, we have the apprehension that there is an attempt to absorb the Sikhs and efface their tradition and cultures. Rejecting assimilation. Sikhs did not want to be assimilated into the Hindus. Okay. Next. Saddam Mahan pointed out, it's a little repetition, but to emphasize, we're talking 95% of the Sikh lived in the villages, and there was common laws based on the culture and not necessarily even religious. 1872 Punjab Law Act, Section 5 of the Statutory Act formally established that customary law, not the Hindu Shastras or Muslim Shastra, is the primary rule of the decision in Punjab. So Punjab never functioned according to 1830 case Ambedkar is using. Sacerdotal control. Punjab customary law is entirely unsacerdotal, secular and shared equally among Hindu, Sikhs, and Muslim village communities alike. So these were customary laws based on the culture, not on religion, and people of our religions in the rural areas lived according to that. This is the position of Sikh representative. Next. Punjab's customary law precedes the Hindu code by being entirely unsacerdotal and secular. Okay. Hindu code bill derives from Manu's thing, then the Punjab's customary laws grown organically over centuries from practical village uses and tribal councils. If it evolved around land and social harmony rather than religious scripture. Social equality, essentially unsacerdotal and unsacramental, it strips away religious hierarchy and ranks the Brahman equally with other ordinary men in civil affairs. So the Brahman was not superior in the Punjab customary laws. Okay. flexibility and progress. Extremely flexible and dynamic, lacking rigid written text. It features highly simplified customary marriage, divorce, and succession practice that reflect the genius of the people. This is the argument Sardar Man and Hukum Singh put forward, but New Manu was struck on his position and did not want to change. Next. There was a Sikh voice is excluded as no representative is included in the original select committee. Select committee is what put this Hindu code bill by Mr. Mandal into the constitution. SGPC opinion was bypassed. They totally opposed, lulled by deception. 95% Sikhs remained indifferent initially because they were repeatedly assured the agricultural land would be exempt from the code. At the end of the parliament session, the law minister suddenly stripped the land exemption, throwing the community into a panic. So this is a panic situation for the Sikhs. Next. 7 Sikh members unified to demand democratic consent via a referendum. So they proposed, let's have a referendum by the Sikhs to vote on this. They all agreed on this, but law minister said there was no need to halt this proceedings, and his opinion stands. So this is the summary of this slide. Next. Ambedkar cites 120-year-old judicial precedent to justify widespread legal uniformity. So he is using the Privy Council case on some personal law issue and ignoring all the arguments Sikh representatives have put forward, and he does not change his position. Next. The fateful 1950 debate culminates in Ambedkar's sudden cabinet resignation. So, key outcome and the climax. A sudden cabinet resignation. Ambedkar could not convince the Sikh representatives, and there were several other speakers, by argument. And in frustration, he resigned from his law ministership and left. Faced with intense opposition from both Sikh representatives and conservative Hindu elements, Dr. Ambedkar resigned and his post as a law minister and withdrew from the provisional parliament in frustration. This debate highlighted fundamental clash of state-building visions in post-independent India. So this, rightly after 1947, their intentions start showing up. The devastating assimilation, the author of the symposium concluded the Ambedkar's attempt to force Sikhs into the fold of Hinduism via Dharmashastra and bizarre legal jargon was a devastating effort to efface their distinct sovereignty. This is what the Sikhs felt. We had this symposium later on. I think you can show, I send you, by Colonel G.B. Singh on this subject, and this symposium is present on the Sikh Heritage Education. If you click article, and there's article Ambedkar and the Sikhs, the whole symposium, word by word, include discussion. All the original discussion is in the red letters, so people can see that. Okay. Next. This is Ambedkar did in 1940. I think we discussed last time how he thinks he is a philosopher of Pakistan, and this is the damage he did in 1940, but he is still arguing the same thing, and he is now making Sikhs into Hindus, and very proud of it. Okay. This slide is overpasted, but that's what it says. So next. Ambedkar's position on Hindu code bill. Core argument: religious founders such as Buddha and the Sikh gurus established distinct faith, but generally did not create separate civil legal system like some of the things have in Islam and Christianity. Yes, but there was a legal system in the Sikh culture, Sikh religion, and in the country of their side, the people was using, and the Sikh representative tried to convince him, but he would not change. His claim was Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists had historically been governed under a common body of Hindu personal law. That's he's talking about 1830 law, even when there's a Sikh empire, and there was no such law accepted by the Sikhs in general. So conclusion, exempting these communities, this is his conclusion, exempting these communities from proposed Hindu code would therefore be impractical. He proposed the Hindu code was presented as a codification and modernization of existing personal law. So this is his position, which is not accepted by Sikhs. Next. Parliament exchange with Sada Hukum Singh. He objected. Sada Hukum Singh argued Parliament was creating a new law and questioned why Sikhs were included. Ambedkar replied. He reported that it was too late to reject the existing legal framework. So his mind was made. He did not want to accept any argument but preferred to resign. For the position, he argued the Hindu code should function uniformly and no province or community should be exempt. Historical significance, the exchange remains an important part of debate over Sikh legal identity. So this was a ugly debate. Sikhs representatives put up their case very vigorously. Ambedkar did not want to accept and left. So this actually became into the law of 1955-56 when the Sikhs did not have enough votes. Sardar Rahman was not in that parliament. Hukum Singh was. I am not sure to find out what he said or not, but he basically then becomes the speaker. So he must have changed his mind or did what was not good. So a critical assessment of Ambedkar's constitutional legacy. Okay. So this is my understanding what Ambedkar has done. You know, some of the people who are, they call themselves Ambedkarites, they listen to you and me so they can pick on us what we're saying. But whatever we are saying here, whatever we're presenting is all from the documents, either Ambedkar's words or Ambedkar's writings, or written in the history in the Indian government's legal description. So we are not making up anything to blame him. He signed the Pune Pact, believing separate electorate with reserved seats in joint electorate permanently. So original provision was that Dalits will have a separate constituency. He signed this agreement with Gandhi when he was threatened. So they will accept separate electorate. Instead of separate electorate, they will have a reserved seats, but everybody will vote. And then he realized he stood for election in the election and he lost. He lost twice. Then he realized what he did was wrong, and then he was saying this constitution doesn't serve anybody. He'll be the first one to burn it, but it was too late. Okay. In 1940, in partition of Punjab and Bengal, he wrote that dossier, which became the basis for which the lines were drawn. We had discussed this before. So he is bragging about his role there. I think we'll talk in a couple of minutes. Article 25, explanation. I believe this provision diminished the distinct constitutional identity of the Sikhs by including Sikhs, Jain, Buddhists within the legal definition of Hindus for specified legislative purpose. He would not change his position. Historical consequences. In my view, these decisions continue to influence debates regarding minority rights, constitutional recognition, and political representations in India. From my perspective, Dr. Ambedkar in 1940 was an architect of division of Punjab and Bengal through population exchange proposal, which affected the Sikhs very severely. Then in 1951, as a law minister, he included the Sikhs into Hindu code. Bill Sikhs can never forgive him for these actions. So I think he done a lot of damage to the Sikhs, even to the Dalits, to the Muslims, And he was very proud or never repented. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is my final conclusion. People may disagree, they have the right to disagree. So, as a law minister, Dr. Ambedkar included Sikhs as Hindus in Article 25 of the Constitution. That's explanation to Part B. He clearly ignored what Guru Nanak said, I am not a Hindu or a Muslim. He knew all this Guru's teaching because there's a rumor that he wanted to be Sikh at one time. I think it's hard to believe that he wanted to be Sikh, what he did. Guru said, I am not a Hindu or Muslim, but he said, you are Hindus. Some may say that by doing so, which also means I am saying he committed constitutional genocide of the Sikhs. Let me say that. Without any reservation, I think I can say he committed constitutional genocide of the Sikhs in Article 25, and he can never be forgiven for that. All what I said so far is based on his own words, his own writings, and nothing that I said here is my personal thing. Okay. So let me, I sent you something this morning which I was not included in these slides. So I found something from his writings, okay, in his book, Thoughts on Linguistic States, written in 1955, page 146. He says, I was glad that India was separated from Pakistan. It was the philosopher, so to say, of Pakistan. I advocate a partition because I felt that it was only by partition that Hindus would not only be independent but free. If India and Pakistan had remained united in one state, Hindus, though independent, would have been at the mercy of Muslims. So he's saving the Hindus from Muslims, and he is a proud philosopher. A merely independent India would not have been a free India from the point of view the Hindus. It would have been a government of one country by two nations, and the Muslims without question would have been the ruling race. Notwithstanding Hindu Mahasabha and Jansangha, when the partition took place, I felt that God was willing to lift his curse and let India be one great and prosperous. Look, I think if you go on SikhHeritageEducation.com, there is one article by one of very nice person, and he says Ambedkar is a founder of Hindu Rashtra. I think he's right. He is founder of Hindu Rashtra, and he is claiming to be one. Let's go next. So, I read his book, Annihilation of Caste. He wrote that in 1936. He was invited to a meeting. There was an organization, say, Jat Paat Todak Mandal, that these people believed the caste system should be ended or broken. They invited him and he wrote his speech. He sent the speech. They wanted him to make some changes, and he refused, but he wrote the book. Then I read it. I was very impressed by reading the book. And some time ago, not too long ago, I think maybe a couple of years ago, one of his grandson, his brother's grandson, were visiting California. So some people said that what he was doing to fight caste system. We invited him in Tracy. There were maybe 50, 60 people present. In fact, I paid all the expense to the restaurant, and I was so appreciative of him coming. And later on, when I read all this, I was shocked to know who this guy was. So 1936, he says, I am born Hindu, but I will not die a Hindu. That's the thesis of that book, Annihilation of Caste, which was supposedly his speech. I am born Hindu, but I will not die a Hindu. Look, later on, he's saying Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs are Hindus. In 1950, his wife writes, the second wife, Savita Ambedkar, in her memoirs, writes that they both went to a Birla temple, which is a Buddhist temple, not Hindu temple. There are two Birla temples. 1950, they embraced Buddhism and practiced that privately. So he was so scared even to come out in public, and he did this privately. But 1956, on October 14, he publicly accepted Buddhism, where other thousands of people with him who believed in him converted. But then on December 6, 1950, he died. For 20 years, he kept saying he was not going to die a Hindu. But not only he died a Hindu, before he died, he said Buddhism was the original Hinduism, then they changed. So this guy was very controversial, very hard to understand his personality, and he looks like he's many personalities in one body. But the damage he did to the minorities cannot be forgiven. I think I'm not wrong saying he committed constitutional genocide of the Sikhs in Article 25. I think this is my conclusion. People can disagree, but before they disagree, they should read what I read. And because what I am saying is based on his original writings, his speeches, his role. Nothing I said was not out of the record. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Grell. That was fascinating, as always. It's interesting when we look at the dynamics of the situation back in 1947 and those sort of 2-3 years that sort of followed during that drafting process, and these arguments were raging. Because the dynamics are actually quite similar to today in many ways. But certainly back in those times, you had, of course, this, thanks to partition, the key opposition to Hindu dominance, of course, was, ironically, it was the Muslims. But with Jinnah separating away and the Muslim League getting their way, that Muslim, the largest minority in India, the Muslims, were then removed from this equation. And actually, you could argue, had they not been removed, they would have formed a suitable counterbalance to this Hindu dominance. But of course, with the removal of the Muslim minority, which was a very large minority, it then allowed that powerful dominant force of Hindus to then essentially steamroller over the drafting of the Constitution. And I even recall from my own discussions with Colonel Singh when we talked about the Constitution, the conclusion was very simple. It was drafted by the Brahmins to maintain Brahmanical control of India at the expense of basically everybody else, whether you're a Sikh, Jain or Buddhist, or even, of course, a Dalit. So it's interesting then that it then spawned this argument, this battle, which, of course, raged in the constitutional drafting between this secular state. And of course, on the face of it, there is this discussion that maintains today that India is a secular nation. So in theory, even back to 1947 and the drafting of the Constitution, it was all designed between a secular state and the sacerdotal or the Hindu dominant arguments. And of course, those were the two arguments that were butting against each other. And then the final drafting of the bill, it appears a bit of a hybrid, where on the face of it, as indeed you've mentioned in your presentation and Colonel Singh has always maintained, on the face of it, it appears to be a fair drafting of a secular constitution. But when you read the small print, of course, it contradicts itself all the way through. And in fact, it really is it is a license for the Hindu, particularly the Brahmanical elite, to maintain control over all Indians, whether they are indeed lower caste or of course, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, Christians, whatever. So it does then beg the question, and you referred to this in your presentation, that most of Ambedkar's arguments were based on historical precedent, back to 1830, I think it was. But of course, Indian law primarily, even today, is based on a similar English law, which is common law, it's called. I think it's customary law, it's called in India, which is the law of precedent. It means that where a court is in doubt or there is ambiguity, it sets a precedent. It makes a decision, and that decision then becomes the law until a better decision comes along. So it must be argued, surely then, that there has been an opportunity for not just the Sikh community, but basically any other community other than the Hindu community, to use Indian common law, customary law, to set new precedents, to put in front of the judicial system, look, this 1830 precedent that everything has been based on, even the Constitution was drafted on this 1830 precedent, that is wrong. And as has even been admitted, it is wrong. So the argument then should there be more of a legal, aggressive movement in today's India to change the constitution for the benefit of the minorities? Now, this, of course, has been done regularly by the government today. Narendra Modi recently, for example, ripped up, was it Article 390 or 370, relating to Jammu and Kashmir. He didn't like it, so he ripped it up, got it rubber stamped by the Supreme Court, and suddenly J&K lost its separate status, its special status. So in other words, the precedent has been set that you can rewrite the constitution. So do you think the Sikhs and other minorities need to be more aggressive, legally speaking, to use the law against this Hindu dominance?
What you're saying is right, but let me explain to you. The Churchill never liked Gandhi. He said this guy wants freedom for himself, but he's not willing to give freedom to the people who are low caste. He understood what these Congress leaders wanted. They wanted a freedom, so they get the control of the country, but they did not want to give freedom to the people who are low caste or poor. And that's clear from the Pune Pact. He went on a fast unto death. I'm going to die if you don't change it. Because they wanted to rule those minorities because they had the upper hand. So this can only change if they have somebody fair, like people who made the Constitution in America. First they did in Virginia, then in America. They took all Sharia law religious laws. So they took all laws, even though they were practicing Christians, they took religion out of the Constitution. But these people, their intention was to create a Hindu Raj. Mr. Jinnah said about Gandhi that he wants the whole country to be together, secular, but at the same time he's saying he wants a Ram Raj. You see how the contradiction is. These people were talking with a forked tongue, and they what they wanted to do is what they did. And people like Ambedkar, I think they came to their assistance. It's hard to understand being educated in America, England, and how he went so low and what he wanted to originally say he wanted to do, and he did the opposite. Either he was influenced, he was afraid, or he didn't have the courage to stand up to them, which is understandable because many people grew up in such a environment, they lack the courage. Not everybody has the courage like Guru Nanak had, or 10th Guru had, or the other Sikh Gurus had. So sacrificing your life for sometimes what you believe in is not easy. So I think whatever he believed, he said he was going to do, but he's come to the things which was not, he should have done. So I think this is very difficult to do. Yes, they should do it. Who's going to do it? People who had the upper hand, they never want to give up a power. This is a story of typical with the kings. The king will never leave until somebody else assassinates him or defeats him. So I think what you're saying is noble. If they can do it, if they can decentralize, maybe they can survive as a country. But I think these people who have the upper hand are corrupted, and they are in power, and they don't want to give up power. They are intoxicated with the power. That's the word I'm trying to find.
Indeed. And of course, as we've discussed before, any authoritarian state, once it controls the judiciary, essentially controls society. And that is obviously the biggest obstacle that's always going to be in the way. But anyway, it's a fascinating discussion, but there we must leave it. But thank you once again, Dr. Grail, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Thank you, Angus. Waheguru ji ka khalsa, Waheguru ji ki fateh. I would like everybody to pay attention, read it, not get angry at me and you discussing something which is very original. We didn't make it up. We're just bringing to public's knowledge that these things happen and they should be aware of it. So if you're not aware of it, it'll happen again and again.
Indeed. We are here to educate and inform. That's exactly why we exist. So thanks very much, Dr. Groyle, and thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.